right, let's jump right into it. Today, right now, we're going to talk about science and religion. And we're going to talk about the main differences between the two. And we're also going to analyze that there is a huge duality here. If you listen to anything that I've talked about in the past, if you know anything about me, you know that I understand that in spirituality, in the spirit realm, metaphysically speaking, there is no such thing as duality. Duality is the one and the other. It's the left and the right, the dark and the light, the hot and the cold. That is the duality that exists in nature, in physical nature. It does not exist in the metaphysical world or reality. Let's get that clear right from the start, because from here on, that is going to be the major theme that keeps popping up throughout this conversation. So we have science on one side, we have religion on the other side. Religion speaks about the past, the scriptures, these stories, these metaphors. Science tries to analyze the world around us through scientific method, by forming a hypothesis, by testing the theory, by using equations and mathematics and all types of scientific tools. That is how you come to scientific answers. Well, scientists are very smart people. They spend a lot of time in school. They spend a lot of time studying. The same exact thing could be true about people that are religious, priests and rabbis. They all devote their lives to learning about the scripture. They devote themselves in school, in their lifestyles and everything, just as a scientist does. So there's literally no difference between Neil deGrasse Tyson and any other priest like the Pope. The only mismatch is that one is using scripture, the other is using scientific method. The people that use scripture over scientific method, they're going to think that they are right because they've devoted themselves, their thinking, their thoughts. They're ignorant, really, to the scientific methodology of things. And the exact same thing is true in reverse. The scientists, they devoted their lives and their studies to science, not religion. So they are ignorant to religion. So what is left is this huge, gaping duality. Now, duality, again, being a human, physical kind of concept, only exists in that realm. But we are not just physical. We're actually physical because of our metaphysical. As in, we would not exist if we were not spiritual energy. We were not spiritual vibration. We were not from somewhere beyond the human plane of existence. This is critical. This is key to understanding this duality and why it exists in the first place. It's not like someone just said, you know what, I'm going to create a separation here. I'm not going to go with what everybody else says. I'm going to separate. I'm going to separate my thoughts, my theories, my understanding of reality, and I'm going to separate it. Because if you look, in the wintertime it's cold. In the summer it's warm. When the sun is here, it's hot. When the moon is here, it's cold. Do you see what I'm saying? This is the duality that exists. It exists everywhere. You have politicians, right? They're both politicians, but a Democrat versus a Republican. Well, I must admit, that is no longer just a duality. It's not just Republicans and Democrats. There's a third and more parties that exist, but those are the main. So those are not a true duality anymore. It's now beyond that. And here's a little understanding about dualities, and not just dualities, but multialities, if you will. As you get closer to a singular point, to a singularity, rather than a duality, when you become singular, it becomes the most powerful of all orientations. Duality splits that strength into two perspectives, two rivers or two flows or two concepts, and by doing so, you've lost the power and strength of that singularity. If you split it up into a triality, like how you would have like a religion, you would have a science, you would have like atheism, you would have all these things split. And because of the split, you lose focus, you lose energy, you lose power and ability to comprehend the overlying everything. It's like in the government. When a government has a project they don't want anybody to really know about, they'll hire contractors to do specific things. It's called compartmentalization. Things are on a need-to-know basis. I'm not going to tell you because you don't need to know. All you need to know is how to finish the project that I'm asking you to do or paying you to do with all this money that the taxpayers don't even know what I'm using it for. That's exactly what is the true reality of such concepts. Duality presents this in such a grand form and allows this type of thing to occur. Now, how did we spring from this singularity to a duality? Well, through scientific method, in fact. There is a culprit in that aspect of using science incorrectly. Just like when you use a vehicle to crash into something rather than to drive it safely to take you from point A to point B. That is the same concept. Scientific method, when used incorrectly, does more damage than it did before it existed. Before that understanding ever occurred, things were the way they were for a reason. And then science comes along, and the people that wield science tools and they don't do it correctly, those are the ones who do the most damage. And the same exact thing is true about religion. When religious scholars and priests and rabbis and things like this, when they use religion in a incorrect way or when they use it to their benefit, it is just as dangerous and it's just as deadly. So what we have here perfectly aligned with what the system's objectives are. And again, the system is the overlying control grid that is in place, the overlying governing body that governs above the government. It governs above every blacklist, every hidden organization. That is the system in a general speaking. So the system itself is perfectly aligned with this duality, and they love dualities because by creating a duality, you create a rift between the two understandings of the universe, of life, of anything in general. When you have more than one, when you have plural, there is a lot more moving parts to examine. There's a lot more missing pieces, and there's a lot more confusion. This is something that, in my opinion, is not as beneficial as it is detrimental to the masses of people who really are not really awakened to any of this in the first place. And by keeping people in the dark, by encouraging consumerism and things of this nature, that is exactly what is happening, and very effectively. So science says that they're right. Religion says that they're right. And the people that have the largest following, the loudest voice, those are the ones who end up winning out when it comes to whose philosophies and understandings of this universe prevail. That is the motivation. So we have in front of us this duality. And in my understanding of dualities, I think that dualities have their place. That's why they exist in the first place. But it's important to be able to see through the duality as a duality because of that fact. Because we want to make sure, yes, for sure, that a duality stems from a singularity. That's the most important key. Dualities extend from singularities. It's the only way they exist. It's the only way it works. So with that being said, consider that. Consider this. Consider all of what we're talking about right now and realize that in my perspective, a duality is there only to show varying points of interest to make sense of more than one way of understanding. To help people understand things that don't get it from the first angle. That's one of the important keys to duality, is understanding the relationship in a way that's much more approachable to a human who lives in a dual and multi-istic world setting. That's important for you to understand, that these exist for that purpose, so that you can understand it, so that you can feel the difference in a big way. When you see that the sun is out and it's nice and warm out, and then it changes to the moon comes out and it's nice and cool, or more relaxed or soothing in a different way, then you can start to realize that that's the idea. That's the main idea. But when we muck it up by saying, you know what, well, I like the sun better, you like the moon better, well, we're at a disagreement, and that's how it is. Well, that's a limited perspective. That is a limited way of thinking. And the purpose for me even speaking in the first place is to unlimit your way of thinking. That is why I'm here. That is my major function. That is what I'm devoted to in my studies and my conversation. Moving forward, it's important to realize that that's what I'm here for. I don't want to offend anyone who thinks differently. And at the same note, please have respect in reverse. Just because you don't like or understand or feel resonation to what I say or how I am, that is fine for you to have those objections, and that is fine for you to be in that way, because that's really what we're here for. We're here for our own experience at the expense of nothing. That is why we're here. The dualities are in place so that we can have that confusion about it, though. That's why they're there, too. That's one of the things that has been exploited about the dualities. So if we use the duality as a tool, and it allows us to continue with our objectives and to have power over others, then I believe that we are misusing that. We are misusing that power, we're misusing that understanding, and we're capitalizing on the fact that people just aren't going to know that off the bat. It's something that you have to learn about. Even though you might feel it in your bones and your spirit and your body and soul, some people are confused because there's a lot of people out there that want you to be confused. I want you to understand that. The people that use those thoughts and theories and dualities to their benefit, they're the ones that get the furthest in the game. And I use the word game because that's what they use. That's how they look at it. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson says things like camp, when you're on that camp, when you're in this camp. And by saying stuff like that, you're basically drawing a line. You're saying, well, I hail to this mentality, this reality, if you want to call it, and you hail to that side of the reality or that camp, as you will. So he's allowing people to realize the duality. He's literally drawing a line in the sand saying, I'm over here, you're over there. And everything over here is correct and just and knowledgeable. And everything on the outside or on the other side is just bullshit. You can have your bullshit if it makes you feel fine or good, but if you dare to jump over this line, I will cut you down to the reality of science, because that is what I say. So in his own way, he's just like a dictator. He's a science dictator all of a sudden. He's morally corrupting people because of this, just like those heavy priests and rabbis and those people that are extremists on the religious side. I look at Neil deGrasse Tyson as one of those almost extremists, where it's science or nothing, and he talks with such conviction about it. I see the line in the sand that he's drawn. It's very clear, and my interpretation of this is not one of inclusion. It's not one of benevolence. It's not one of enlightenment in any way. It is just a guy, in my opinion, who's felt what it feels like to be on the main stage. He felt what it feels like to be popular and famous and to have people gripping onto his words. Whether he's right or wrong, the greed of that has consumed him, and he is compromised, in my opinion. Just like anyone who earns millions of dollars, or the people that are in Hollywood that have sold themselves to do things that they don't want to or love to do, just so they can make money, just so they can be famous. It's all currency in that aspect. It's all power and currency. The more currency you have, the more power you have. The more power you have, the more influence you have. The more influence you have, the more people will be dumb to the reality because they're absorbing yours. And that, in my opinion, is where I stand up and say, this is not enlightenment. If it's not enlightenment, it's not pure truth, then that is where I have to draw my own conclusion that he is not being the outstanding citizen of humanity that he should be. And I have to call him out on that. I have to bring this up, because there's a lot of people who say, oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's so smart. He knows everything. I'm going to listen to everything he says, and whatever he pumps into my head, it's just going to be verbatim and fact, and that's how I feel. And the same thing is true about when the Pope speaks to the religious people. Everything the Pope says it's the most spiritually amazing thing, like you could think of. And there is, again, an issue that I have with that, because it's not about truth anymore. It's not about the real fundamental points about life. It's not about whether you want truth. It's only about whether the person who's telling you it's truthful actually has an agenda. That's what it really boils down to. If you ask me, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye and all those big mainstream scientists, they're all part of the same organization. They're part of an organization of disinformation and confusion. That's literally what their job is. Neil deGrasse Tyson is now saying that the Earth is no longer a round globe, but it's more of an oblate spheroid, which means that it is a pear-shaped Earth instead. In my opinion, the fact that the true nature of this Earth being flat, this is coming to the crux very soon. It hasn't apexed yet, but it's getting close to the top of that hill, where people en masse are going to be saying, you know what, the Earth can't be round. It cannot be a globe. There's just no way. There's no science to support it. There's nothing that actually allows you to believe that this Earth is round like that. And so that is coming to the head very soon. And people en masse are starting to convert from that broken understanding of life to a more realistic reality. And when they do that, as more people convert over to the reality, guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, they have to stand up and start doing damage control. Because by allowing people to think that the world is flat, then it also opens them up to a spiritual nature. It opens them up to a whole new understanding of life, and it limits the control that anyone can have over you after that. And you can start to see through the lies. You can see through the lies that the government tells you. You can see through the lies that these organizations that have lots of power, wealth, and influence. When you start to see through their lies, it's laughable in a certain degree. It's like watching a reality TV show where you see the characters on TV getting like uphanded and being sold out by their friends, and people always conniving behind other people's backs, and it's funny TV. But you can see both sides. You can see the antagonist and the protagonist point of view. That's what reality TV is all about. But when you wake up to this, you start to see it that way too. You start to see the real reality in front of you from two perspectives, but centering yourself in the middle. This allows you to have full comprehension of the situations at every moment. And by doing so, you have complete liberation. You are completely liberated to be who you want to be. It's quite amazing. So the dualities exist in a human form, in physical nature, but they do not exist in the spiritual form, which is what you stem from. You are God in that way. That is what God is, and there's nothing else. God is not a deity. It's not a he. It's not a him or a her. It's not someone who dictates or judges anybody for any reason. It just simply is, and that is as deep as it needs to be. You are a spiritual extension of that, and you are in a physical form right now. Get that into your mind so you can start to go forward in the process of spiritual evolution. Because remember, your body is a physical representation of your spiritual self. It's just like a car. Your spirit gets into the car, like you get into a car to drive it. The car doesn't have any idea that it's a car. The car doesn't know where it's going. It just does, right? Just like your human body. It just does. And the difference is that your human body has a very powerful brain in it. It has a very powerful computer chip, if you will. And that computer has questions. For it to do the right thing for the soul, it has questions, physical questions. But outside of that, it doesn't know anything else. And that is what is important to understand. Once you realize that there's something more than just your physical body, it liberates you completely. And so with that, I'm going to leave you with those thoughts, and I will speak to you and see you very, very soon. Love and liberation to all. And thanks for listening. Please feel free to share and repost and follow and subscribe. I don't want you to subscribe to me because I'm telling you to subscribe to me. I don't want you to follow me because I'm telling you to follow me. Spread the messages that resonate with you. I'm just reminding you to do that. If something matters enough to you, if some of this information makes any sense to you, it might make sense to some of your friends. It might make sense to people that you know. So if you want this information to keep going, if you want it to grow, then subscribe, share, be part of it. That's what it's all about. That's the love and liberation credo. That's what we do. That is my ultimate objective, is to help people, assist people, and to feel good with people. That's what it is all about. Let's experience this human experience together and have the most amazing time doing it. Thank you.